My name is Emily, and at 44 years old, I am a TV broadcaster. My husband, Tom, also 44, runs a photography studio. We began dating in high school and tied the knot at the age of 26, having been each other's first boyfriend and girlfriend. Our relationship felt like a natural progression, and we never considered anyone else. When I was 25 and tragically lost my parents in an accident, I couldn't fathom how I would have coped without Tom, who became like family to me. Following our marriage, Tom moved into the house my parents left me, and I felt a sense of security and warmth, surrounded by the memories of my parents and Tom. 2 years into our marriage, we were blessed with a son, and our happiness multiplied. Tom proved to be an ideal husband, sharing responsibilities for household chores and childcare seamlessly, making our lives as a working couple more manageable. However, my mother-in-law, Jen, did not share the same appreciation for Tom's involvement in domestic tasks. A decade ago, an incident unfolded when our son started elementary school. Jane, who lived about 30 minutes away, began visiting more frequently to assist with picking up our son after school. This was necessary as after-school care ended earlier than our work hours, and Jane's help became invaluable. Around the same time, my father-in-law, Steve, had retired and was at home, though he couldn't contribute to household chores. Jane, being a traditional housewife, disapproved of Tom taking charge in the kitchen. She would mutter comments like, "A man shouldn't be in the kitchen," or express disbelief, saying, "Our generation would never imagine such a thing." During my initial visit to Tom's parents' house, Jane suggested I should quit my job, emphasizing her belief that women should be housewives. She seemed uncomfortable with my glamorous job as a broadcaster, while Tom, who knew me from our high school broadcasting club days, consistently supported my dream. Similarly, I backed Tom in his pursuit of becoming a photographer, and working together felt entirely natural for us. Despite successfully navigating the challenges of nursery school days, elementary school brought new difficulties with less flexible and appealing after-school care. This situation led to increased reliance on Jane's help. However, her visits came with comments on the cleanliness and orderliness of our home, to which Tom would casually respond, defending his involvement in household tasks. Despite her assistance being appreciated, Jane continued to express her disapproval behind my back, questioning Tom's choices and suggesting it was detrimental to our reputation. I listened quietly without interjecting, while Jen held onto her old-fashioned beliefs, despite owning a smartphone, a rarity among people her age. Among my circle of friends, I was the sole owner of such a device, and Jen often boasted about its capabilities, emphasizing how easy it made things. She browsed the internet for various purposes, exclaiming, "Look at what you can do so effortlessly now." Embrace convenience. Her smartphone wasn't the only modern convenience she embraced. While our family relied on a traditional paper-based shopping order, Jen advocated for online services, suggesting it was a waste to pay for delivery and insisting we should do the shopping ourselves. However, when she discovered that the service could be ordered online, she promptly encouraged me to switch, criticizing the old-fashioned method of ordering on paper. Jen would often stay until late at night while Tom and I prepared dinner. She'd mention needing to return home for Steve's dinner, implying he wouldn't eat alone. Steve, unable to perform any household tasks, prompted me to ask Tom about his cooperative nature with chores one day. Tom explained that his mother's complaints about his father's lack of help served as a negative example for him. He resolved to be proactive in sharing household responsibilities to avoid similar complaints in his own marriage. Jen's contradictory attitudes toward household chores puzzled me. She seemed amused that her son, raised in an environment where chores were shared, actively participated, while she resented her husband's lack of involvement. I couldn't comprehend her satisfaction criteria, but I suspected she found solace in complaining. To maintain peace, I chose to keep my distance as much as possible during those times. I never imagined Jen would feel so trapped that she'd resort to something as extreme as selling our house without consent. That summer, my company offered me a rare opportunity to participate in a sports broadcast at the World Championship overseas, which felt like a well deserved reward for my hard work. It was an opportunity I couldn't let slip by, so I immediately discussed it with Tom. He, occupied with various commitments, expressed willingness to help but was unsure about managing our son John alone while juggling his responsibilities. Listening in, Jen offered to take care of things at home during my absence, despite my reservations based on past experiences. And with no one else to rely on, I reluctantly entrusted my son to her care. Although we contemplated having Tom and John stay at Tom's parents' place, the logistics of commuting to school made it impractical. Hence, Jen decided to stay at our house during weekdays to look after John. After successfully completing my broadcasting work abroad and feeling both exhausted and relieved to return to the U.S., I arrived home on a weekday afternoon, lugging a heavy suitcase. To my surprise, Jane greeted me eagerly at the entrance, as if she had been anticipating my arrival. Just as I was about to express my gratitude for taking care of the house, she dropped a bombshell. The house had been sold for $300,000, and she intended to claim the full amount. My fatigued mind struggled to comprehend her words at first. This was our house, our home. I questioned her in disbelief, only to receive a confident affirmation from her gleaming eyes. Stunned and confused, I reiterated that we owned the house, but Jane burst into laughter, accusing me of lying and insisting that there was a registration certificate in my name. Faced with her unwavering stance and feeling utterly perplexed, I realized the conversation was going nowhere. I decided to shift the conversation to ease my heart, but the tension lingered. "Why are you selling what belongs to both of us?" I inquired, trying to reason calmly. "If it's mine, it's Tom's too, and consequently ours." As her bloodshot eyes met mine, a sense of unease crept over me. "To build a new house," she declared, her tone resolute. "A house for you and Tom, where he won't need to lift a finger for household chores. I've always felt sorry for him." Her words sent a chill down my spine. A new house, exclusively for Tom and me? The notion left me bewildered. "But why?" I asked, trying to grasp her reasoning. "Because," she explained, "I taught Tom not to engage in such tasks, and I won't allow him to do them in the future." Her conviction was unwavering, driven by a distorted understanding of our marital dynamics. Piecing together the puzzle, I realized that Jen's perspective stemmed from a misunderstanding. Tom's simple declaration of the house belonging to me had been misconstrued. She believed Tom's involvement in household chores was a deviation from his desires, fueled by his residence in my home. Moreover, I learned that Steve's retirement had brought financial strain, exacerbating their insecurities about their rented apartment. In desperation, they opted for the unthinkable, selling our home. But this isn't just mine, and Tom finds it normal to share household responsibilities. I protested, hoping to reason with her. Jen dismissed my words as falsehoods, accusing me of distorting reality to suit my narrative. Though I wanted to point out her role in the situation, I needed clarity first. "Where did you sell it?" I pressed, attempting to understand the extent of her actions. "To AA Real Estate," she disclosed, citing an easy online process and a convincing offer. They assured me it was the right decision, given the high demand in the area. Her words stung as I realized the magnitude of her actions. Selling a 20-year-old house for $300,000 seemed like a windfall, but the consequences were far-reaching. Gratitude was the last thing on my mind amidst the turmoil her decision had caused. Didn't I find a good real estate company? I excitedly shared with Jane, having researched and located a seemingly suitable one online. However, my attempts to contact them proved futile, as there was no answer. Questioning Jane about her visit to the real estate company's address, she responded nonchalantly, "No, I didn't go." "You don't need to do that nowadays." Determined to verify the legitimacy of the real estate company, I insisted, "Go to this address tomorrow, or we won't discuss this any further." Reluctantly, Jane left, And the next day, she called me in tears. It's not there. The real estate company doesn't exist at the address. There's only a dilapidated wooden house, seemingly uninhabited. I was astonished by her foolishness and couldn't help but burst into laughter upon her return. She explained that during my absence, she discovered a house registration certificate in my name, assuming she could sell the property. She had contracted a real estate agent who shamelessly assured her that it was fine to proceed, even if she wasn't the owner, as long as she possessed the certificate. Believing them, she sent all the requested documents, and when a buyer was found, they requested a deposit, half of the $9,600 commission on the $300,000 sale. She transferred $4,800. Realizing the gravity of the situation, I called the police, and 2 officers arrived at our house. It turned out that such internet fraud, posing as real estate agents, had become increasingly common. These fraudsters offered free valuations, requested official documents, introduced a supposed buyer, took a fee, and then disappeared. With many vacant houses and the ability to fake addresses for document delivery, such scams had become prevalent. The police questioned Jane, who was trembling as she answered. The officer clarified, "Let me ask again. The house deed you sent belongs to your daughter-in-law, right?" Jane nervously confirmed, realizing the gravity of the situation now that a third party was involved. Jane nervously began, I thought, "Well, it belonged to my son," but her explanation was swiftly countered by the officer. "Even if it was your son's, isn't it strange to try to sell someone else's house?" He questioned incredulously. Red-faced, Jane blurted out, "No, it's not like that. Emily asked me to. She wanted to get the house appraised to sell it," spouting a nonsensical excuse. Turning to me for clarification, the officer asked, "Is that true?" I simply replied, "No, I didn't ask for that." The officer, unsure of whose testimony to believe, eventually seemed to trust me over my visibly distressed Jane. She says she didn't ask for it. "You shouldn't sell things on your own, madame. Normally, this wouldn't even be possible. This is just outrageous," he lectured, and Jane bit her lip, looking down in silence. Convinced of Jane's rash actions, the officer inquired about the deed registration she had sent. When she replied in a faint voice, "No, it was the original," the officer was even more astounded. Looking at me, he asked, "Will you file a theft report?" I answered, "No, that document is invalid now. Actually, this house has already been sold to someone else. When we saw it, we could do so just with the registration identification information. The law had changed, so the deed registration wasn't needed. Indeed, I had received the deed when I inherited the house from my parents, but it was unnecessary when selling the house." Jane, unaware of this, thought that deed meant I still owned the house. Normally, real estate agents would request or retrieve a copy of the deed themselves for verification, but fraudsters didn't need such details. After the embarrassment, she looked at me resentfully and muttered, "Why didn't you sell the house?" It's a curse to sell your parents' home. People in flashy jobs are like this. I met her gaze and said, "Tom wanted it. He needed a lump sum." Jane exclaimed in surprise, her face turning even bluer. At that time, Tom wanted to start his dream photography business, but didn't have enough funds. The house was our only significant asset, so we sold it to an acquaintance and rented it back. When I explained everything, Jane's shoulders slumped as she muttered, "So Tom's success now is because you sold the house, Emily." Well, I could say that, but I believe that spouses should stick together through thick and thin. "We're in this together," I responded. Upon hearing this, Jane suddenly began to cry bitterly. "I wanted to work too," she sobbed, her voice choked with frustration. "My husband can't do anything, even now after his retirement. He does nothing. What has my life been for?" Her litany of complaints against T continued, leaving the police officer struggling to complete the report. Ultimately, the fraud report was filed. But even after 10 years, the culprits have not been caught, and it's unlikely that the money will ever be recovered. Following the incident, Steve became vigilant over Jan's actions and took over all financial control, denying her any access to money. Whenever she needed something, she had to request it from him and would be given cash. "It's so suffocating," Jane complained to Tom, who reminded her that she brought it upon herself. Now with no disposable income, she works through senior job listings and currently teaches the elderly how to use smartphones. She's well regarded for her ability to empathize with the struggles of older learners. Steve, perhaps due to his pride, found senior jobs unsuitable and quit soon after starting, providing no income. Nowadays, Jen is busier, often leaving Steve with household duties as she goes out. Interestingly, he's taken an interest in cooking and is getting quite good at it. The roles in Tom's parents' house have reversed, but both seem to have found new fulfillment. As for me, after my overseas business trip, I successfully climbed the career ladder and now anchor the evening news. Tom's photography studio is thriving, and we've managed to save enough to consider buying back and renovating the family home. We are grateful to our acquaintance for allowing us to keep the house despite the outrageous incident. It worked out well for Tom's parents in the end. Our son is turning 17 and approaching adulthood, so I shared the story with him as a cautionary tale about internet fraud. However, to preserve his grandparents' dignity, I've kept the part about them trying to sell our house a secret.
How much did you inherit? Simon's question came out of nowhere, catching me off guard on the night of my father's funeral. I was still reeling from my grief when he asked, "I heard your father had an inheritance of $3 million. So once again, how much did you get?" The inquiry gave me an unsettling feeling. Distraught and desperate to avoid further tension, I lied. "Nothing. I didn't inherit anything. It seems my sister and mother are the ones who received it." Simon's face lit up with a triumphant grin. "I knew it. Your parents always said you were incompetent and that they didn't care about you. I'm glad my instincts were right." "What?" I could barely process his words. "I want a divorce," he declared coldly. "I can't be with someone who's poor now. I've already found someone else. I need you out of my life." With that, Simon had me sign the divorce papers. His family mocked me for my misery, but they were mistaken. They could never understand how relieved I felt to be rid of Simon's betrayal. My name is Jane. I come from a family of 4 with a younger sister named Kim. From a young age, Kim and I never got along. My mother, Anne, always sided with Kim, leaving me feeling isolated, though I eventually became accustomed to it. My father, Dan, was the only one who seemed to care, but his demanding job kept him away from home, leaving me alone with my feelings of abandonment. Even as an adult, my situation remained unchanged. I wasn't allowed to attend college due to tuition fees. Yet, when Kim was set to enroll in a private college, my mother insisted that it would be a waste not to send her despite my own lack of educational opportunities. "Jane, you're not sharp or smart like Kim. It's only right that you support her education and contribute to the household. It's what any responsible older sister would do," my mother said, as if it were common sense. Her words stung deeply, and tears streamed down my face. Kim looked at me with disdain, adding, "It's your own fault you're incompetent. You're uglier and less successful than me, so you should try harder. If you can't do that, you're worthless." The toxicity of my family environment drove me to leave home once I started working. Living alone wasn't difficult for me. It felt liberating. Initially, my father sent me a small amount of money to help out, but after 6 months, that stopped. Instead, I received a letter from my mother accusing me of theft. "Your father was sending you money without our permission. You have no right to it because you haven't contributed to Kim's tuition or supported us. I'll be sending you an invoice for the total amount you received. Make sure to refund it. Stop being a thief." My mother's resentment was clear, and she sent an invoice calculated to cover the exact amount of alimony, demanding repayment for the money I had received from my father. I was deeply uncomfortable discussing or debating the matter any further, so I complied with my mother's demands, sent the money, and quietly moved to a new apartment. A few years later, I married Simon, whom I met at work. Determined to sever ties with my past, I decided to inform my parents about my marriage. When I returned to their house, I was struck by how much my father had aged. The once industrious man now looked frail and bent, struggling even to stand. "Oh, you're back," my mother remarked with disdain. I wonder what this ungrateful daughter, who never sends any money home, wants. When I asked about my father's condition, my mother sneered. He injured his back about a year ago and can't work anymore. Now he just stays at home and gets in my way. He's as useless as you are, Jane. Simon was taken aback by my mother's harsh words, but his attention quickly shifted when he saw my sister Kim. Wow, you're Jane's sister. You're stunning. I can hardly believe you two are related. Kim, who had grown more self-centered since starting college, now sported flashy clothes and a vibrant hair color that seemed inappropriate for her age. Despite being old enough to have graduated, she still seemed like a student, which reflected her lack of seriousness about her studies. This guy is your husband, Jane, Kim said, eyeing Simon with fiend sweetness. He's quite handsome and seems way too good for you. I almost feel sorry for him. Kim deliberately flirted with Simon, her touches and compliments clearly meant to show off. It pained me to see Simon so delighted by Kim's attention, but I resolved to stay focused on my plans. I was marrying Simon, and that was final. I'm going to cut ties with all of you, I declared. Well, if you're going to do that, could you at least wait until I've finished taking care of your father? My mother replied, barely looking up from her snacks. I need to look after him. But honestly, I don't want to. And I definitely don't want Kim to deal with it either. It's her college life, after all. It would be a shame to distract her with such a bothersome task. You should be responsible for taking care of your father, Jane. Both of you are incompetent, so you'll get along just fine. Her words infuriated me, but I knew I couldn't ignore my father's needs. From that day forward, I began visiting my parents' house frequently to care for him. As I took on this responsibility, I discovered that neither my mother nor Kim worked. Kim didn't have a part-time job, and my mother had been a stay-at-home since my father's collapse. Yet they frequently dined out and shopped extravagantly. To my shock, they had even taken my father's bank book without his permission, spending his savings as if it were their own. My father was aware of their actions but chose to remain silent. Dad, they'll keep doing this unless we do something about it. Why didn't you tell me sooner? If I had, they would never admit they were wrong or apologize, he said. I didn't want to burden you further. Despite everything, my father had always worked tirelessly for the family and was the only one who truly cared for me. I wanted to help him in any way I could. Just as I was contemplating how to address the situation, I received a call from the hospital where my father had been admitted after his collapse. I rushed to my parents' house before heading to the hospital. My mother and sister were lounging on the couch, absorbed in the TV, showing no sign of worry when the hospital called me. Father collapsed, didn't he? I asked, exasperated. Oh, it's an exaggeration to say he collapsed, my mother replied dismissively. He just fell in the hallway and hit his head. The ambulance took him to the hospital. I'll leave the rest to you. But we need to go to the hospital. I'm worried about Father, I insisted. Shut up, she snapped. If he doesn't make it, the insurance will cover it. Why are you getting so emotional? My mother's coldness and her indifference made me sick. I left them behind and rushed to the hospital. At the hospital, I found my father lying in bed, hooked up to various tubes and barely conscious. As his condition worsened, he managed to notice me and murmured faintly, I'm sorry for being so sudden. I must be being punished. I wasn't a good father because I couldn't protect you from our family. With those final words, my father closed his eyes. I don't care about that, Dad. I love you. Please get well soon, I pleaded, holding his hand tightly, but he never responded. A week later, a lawyer contacted me regarding my father's will. He informed me that I was named as the beneficiary of an inheritance. According to the will, I was to inherit $3 million. I was stunned. It turned out that my father had hidden another bank book, separate from the one my mother had taken, which held the $3 million. He had also left a note specifying that this information should not be shared with any other family members. It seemed that this was his way of ensuring my future, even after he was gone. Overwhelmed by my father's unexpected kindness, I made my way back to my parents' house to retrieve the hidden bank book. As I arrived, my mother and sister were waiting at the front door, their stances commanding and imperious. What are you doing here now? My mother demanded. Came to scavenge things now that Dan's dead? How despicable. Everything here, the house, the car, belongs to me and Kim. Don't act like a thief. I knew better than to discuss my inheritance with them, especially given their unwillingness to listen. I'm here to collect father's memorabilia, and shouldn't I be entitled to at least a small share of the inheritance? Without missing a beat, my mother produced a document and waved it in front of me. It was another will, supposedly written by my father, but the handwriting was unmistakably Kim's, not my father's distinctive script. The will claimed that my mother and sister would inherit all of my father's estate. I can't make out much of this since Kim's handwriting is so poor, I said, struggling to understand the document. That doesn't matter, my mother replied coldly. This is the will, and it's already been shared with all our relatives and neighbors. It's too late for you to contest it now. My mother refused to let me enter the house, fully aware that I knew the will was a forgery. Defeated, I left and returned home. Simon was waiting for me, concern etched on his face. Were you at your parents' house? If you told me, I would have gone with you. It's a shame I missed seeing Kim. I was taken aback. Why are you so interested, and what does any of this have to do with you, Simon? I went to retrieve my father's inheritance, but my mother and sister kicked me out of the house. How much did you all inherit from your father? Simon asked me, curiosity piqued. I'm not sure of the total amount, but the house, land, and everything else were in his name. So it must be quite substantial, I replied. I see, Simon said, pressing further. And how much of the inheritance do you get, Jane? I hesitated, knowing I shouldn't reveal the truth. My instincts told me there was no inheritance for me. Everything was going to be divided between my mother and sister. Simon's face darkened as he suddenly retrieved the divorce papers from his room and thrust them in front of me. I knew it. I knew you wouldn't inherit anything. You're just a burden, and I've been talking to Kim a lot lately. Honestly, you're just in my way. I want a divorce now, since there's nothing in it for me if we stay together. Simon had already signed his portion of the divorce papers, so I signed them immediately. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of satisfaction as I watched Simon leave with the papers, eager to file them at the city office. This was likely the last time I'd see him smile so broadly, and the same went for my mother and sister. It felt like justice was finally catching up with those who had tormented my father and me for years. Later that day, I consulted with a lawyer who had handled my father's will and asked him to accompany me to my parents' house. When I presented the real will to my mother and sister, their usual calm demeanor turned to shock and disbelief as they read the document over and over. This is a lie, my mother protested. I have a will here that states Kim and I are the sole heirs. If you claim the other will is a forgery, the lawyer said, we can conduct a handwriting analysis. If it's proven to be a fake, you could be charged with fraud. Are you prepared to face that? My mother was left speechless, unable to respond. I also learned a great deal from Dan. He revealed that even after his health declined, my mother and sister had abandoned him, sold all his possessions without permission, and acted as they pleased. Kim, on the other hand, had been indulging in reckless behavior, gambling and spending excessively from his personal bank account, leaving him deeply in debt. Due to these malicious actions, both of them were stripped of any inheritance rights. The lawyer made it clear that if my mother and sister continued to unjustly interfere with my inheritance, we would file a lawsuit against them. As the lawyer finished speaking, my mother and sister were left in a state of utter despair. I decided it was time to collect my father's hidden bank book and leave my parents' house for good. With that, I finally felt completely free from the burdens of my family. Soon after, Simon, unaware of the truth, apparently approached my sister, hoping to start a relationship with her. My mother and sister, keeping the inheritance issue a secret, married him quickly. Their aim was to secure a steady source of income and make him their personal ATM. Simon, deceived and eager to enjoy his newfound wealth, bought several luxury cars and quit his job, relying on what he thought was their inheritance. Eventually, Simon noticed something was off and reached out to me in a panic. Jane, I was wrong. You're all I have. I want to start over. I replied simply, I don't need you anymore. Besides, you have Kim now. You should take care of your wife properly, and gently ended the call. Moments before Simon called, I have received a call from Kim. You've ruined my life. Simon quit his job and splurged like a fool as soon as we got married. I can't believe a man who only cares about money is now my husband. My family name is tarnished because of him. What are you going to do about it? I responded calmly, Kim, you're just as interested in money as Simon is. You two are a perfect match. Besides, I heard you and Simon were getting along well while we were still married. Be happy your love came true. I'll be filing a claim for compensation for the affair, though. From now on, let's only communicate through our lawyers. I never want to hear from you again. Hey, I'm your sister. Aren't you going to treat me like family? Kim protested. I laughed at her words. You're the one who never treated me like family. With that, I hung up, blocked her number, and never heard from her again. I was finally free. I used my father's inheritance to build a new house and settled into it. I found a fulfilling job as an office clerk and embraced a busy but satisfying life on my own. Occasionally, I felt a pang of loneliness, but I knew my father was watching over me. As I looked at his picture on my wall, I felt his gentle smile and knew he was proud. My name is Erica, and I'm 39 years old. My husband Mark is 6 years my senior, and we've been married for over 15 years. This year, our daughter started high school, which marks a new chapter in our lives. After settling down to raise our child, I started a handmade business. It's been thriving, and I'm increasingly busy with orders. While things seem to be going well professionally, my married life has been a different story. Mark and I met at work, where he was my trainer. His maturity and the 6-year age difference initially attracted me. We started dating, and not long after, I discovered I was pregnant. The unexpected news led us to marry quickly. Due to severe morning sickness and Mark's request, I resigned from my job and became a housewife. As soon as I left work, I was expected to handle chores at my mother-in-law's house, which was just a 5-minute walk from ours. Despite my struggles with morning sickness, I was pressured to help out, as my mother-in-law insisted it was my duty as a wife. My husband and mother-in-law frequently reminded me that, as a wife, I was obligated to handle household tasks and follow my mother-in-law's directives. This constant pressure made me start believing that I had no choice but to comply. Living with a growing child and having quit my job made it hard for me to rely on my own parents for support. Divorce was never a consideration at the time. Fortunately, Mark was kind to our daughter, Nancy, and I managed to endure the situation. However, things changed when Mark's brother married and had a baby boy. My mother-in-law's attitude shifted, and she became critical of Nancy, often lamenting about the lack of a male heir. Mark, worried about his mother's views, began to distance himself from Nancy, who he had once cherished deeply. Mark's family is not involved in business and lives off their vegetable garden and a large backyard. They had land generations ago but gave it up long ago. I couldn't understand why there was such a fixation on heirs, especially with outdated notions about the eldest son and heir. To protect Nancy from hearing these hurtful words, I tried to limit our visits to Mark's parents. During my pregnancy, they called frequently, but after Nancy was born, I often refused their visits. I wanted to focus on my daughter and distance myself from my in-laws' selfish expectations. When I finally reached the end of my patience, I made a decisive change. As soon as my daughter turned 2, I returned to work, despite my husband and mother-in-law's displeasure. Anticipating their resistance, I kept my decision to myself until I had secured a job and enrolled my daughter in daycare. During this time, a friend suggested I try making handmade goods, and what started as a hobby quickly evolved into a passion. I began creating and selling my work, and it gained momentum after a friend admired a piece and wanted to purchase it. Her praise encouraged me, and soon her friends followed suit, spreading the word about my creations. As demand increased, I decided to sell my items online. The orders kept pouring in, and what began as a side job soon became my full-time career as a professional artist. Despite my success, I continued to distance myself from my in-laws. Visits during holidays like Thanksgiving and Christmas were inevitable, though. As my daughter grew older, my mother-in-law began to impose household chores on her, insisting, "She's a girl. It's expected." It was infuriating, but my daughter's calm demeanor helped me keep my composure. Although these visits were infrequent, they were painful to endure. I felt heartbroken watching my daughter quietly do her chores, feeling pity and sadness as I witnessed her comply with my mother-in-law's demands. Meanwhile, my husband enjoyed his time socializing with relatives and siblings, seemingly unaffected by the discomfort I felt. I felt even more miserable as I walked into the house. "Hi there, you must be hungry. I'll make dinner soon," I greeted my daughter when she came home from school. But she seemed different. Her usual cheerfulness was replaced with a sullen expression. She called out to me, but her eyes were distant and troubled. Concerned, I rushed over. "What's wrong? Did something happen at school?" I asked, but she only shook her head silently. My daughter had always been calm, never shedding a tear since starting middle school. I waited patiently, hoping she would open up. Finally, she spoke, her voice trembling. "Dad? What about him?" I prompted, sensing something was deeply troubling her. Her eyes filled with tears. "He was hugging a woman," she said, a tear escaping down her cheek. More followed, and soon her face was streaked with tears. Over time, my husband and I had grown distant, though we remained united for our daughter's sake. Despite our strained relationship, I had hoped he would stay faithful, and I accepted his lack of involvement in housework and childcare. I never blamed him for that. I was determined to avoid raising our daughter in a single-parent household, so I convinced myself that our situation was tolerable. We might not smile together, but as a family of three, we could still find moments of laughter. Now, though, my husband's betrayal was clear. My daughter's tears were a painful reminder of the love and trust that had been eroded, and I felt a deep sadness in seeing her cry about something so heart-wrenching. I felt my eyes burn with anger as I looked at my daughter. "Mom, I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Why are you apologizing, Nancy?" I asked, though I could see the pain in her eyes. She remained silent, her gaze fixed on the floor. Seeing her distress only deepened my own. I felt like I was failing her as a mother. "I'm sorry, Nancy. I'm just such a weak mother. If I hadn't seen it." "No, Nancy, you didn't do anything wrong," I reassured her, though my heart was heavy. Her uniform was damp with tears, and her face was trembling as she clenched her fists. My own tears, which I had tried so hard to hold back, began to fall. "I can't forgive him," I said softly, my resolve strengthening. "Honey, can we talk for a minute?" I asked my husband when he came home. "I'm tired," he replied curtly, barely glancing at me. His cold tone would usually have silenced me, but today was different. "I have something important to tell you," I said, struggling to stay calm. He clicked his tongue in annoyance and sat down across from me at the dining table. "What's it about? What have you been up to today?" "Of course, I was working," I answered, though his dismissive attitude only fueled my frustration. Without warning, he slammed his hand on the table, yelling, "What are you asking me?" I took a deep breath and continued, "I saw you hugging a woman." I didn't mention that Nancy had seen it too. My husband's reaction was immediate and harsh. "So what?" he snapped, looking at me with a scowl. "What about it?" "Are you cheating on me?" I asked, my voice trembling. He laughed derisively. "What else could it be?" His mockery left me speechless, my mind reeling from his offensive demeanor. As he noticed my reaction, he looked at me with an expression that mixed disdain and curiosity. "What's wrong with that?" he asked, his tone dripping with contempt. "What do you have to complain about?" "It's an affair," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "You don't even care about our relationship." His response was chilling, as if it were all just a matter of fact. "We got married because you were pregnant. We stayed together out of obligation. What more do you want from me?" His words cut deep. "I've been here all this time, supporting you," he continued, his laughter bitter and victorious. When he noticed the divorce papers I had prepared, he grabbed them from me. "Divorce papers? What's this? You thought showing me these would make me listen? Nonsense. If you want it so badly, I'll sign them for you," he said with a sneer. He filled out the papers with exaggerated motions and threw them at me. "How can you even think of divorcing me? I've been taking care of you while you're not even working. You quit your job just because you had a baby. You're nothing." His harsh words echoed in my mind as I looked at the divorce papers on the floor. "You should be grateful I'm not the one asking for the divorce," he continued. "If you don't want it, don't say anything." With that, he took out his phone and began dialing. His sweet, false voice made it clear he was calling his girlfriend. I knew I couldn't confront him about it, so I stayed silent. About a month later, it was time for our annual Christmas visit to my in-laws. My husband was eager to go, bustling around to get ready. "Hey," I said, trying to catch his attention. "I need to talk to you." "Not now. We're running late," he replied dismissively. "You can talk to me at my parents' house." He hurriedly bundled me and our daughter into the car, his excitement palpable. As usual, he was the only one chatting cheerfully, while I felt the weight of our unresolved issues and his lack of respect. "Welcome home," he said as we arrived, but his words felt hollow and meaningless to me. When we arrived, my mother-in-law greeted us with a forced smile and ushered us into the living room. We exchanged pleasantries with the relatives who had arrived before us. "Oh my God, it's so nice to see you after such a long time," my mother-in-law said with exaggerated cheerfulness. Her emphasis on long time hinted at her displeasure over my recent absence. I knew she resented that I hadn't been visiting as often. As my daughter-in-law, you need to help with the chores, she always said whenever I came over, though she never asked the same of my brother-in-law's wife. But then again, they lived far away and rarely visited. My mother-in-law directed me to the kitchen. I didn't mind helping at first, but when she also urged my daughter, Nancy, to join, I felt a pain of frustration. No, I began, but my mother-in-law cut me off. She's a girl, she should be able to do this, she said, her tone dismissive. At that moment, something inside me snapped. I turned to my husband, who was preparing drinks. Honey, we need to talk. What is it now? He responded, irritation evident on his face. This can't wait. It has to be now, I insisted, ignoring his annoyed expression. Erica, let's handle this later, he said, clearly wanting to avoid the confrontation. Let's focus on the party for now. But my mother-in-law interrupted again, concerned about how her relatives would perceive her. You're my daughter-in-law. I have plenty of work for you, she said, trying to divert attention from the issue at hand. After scanning the room and seeing the curious glances of her guests, she muttered, on Christmas Day, I'll make sure she and her daughter handle everything. Taking a deep breath, I stood up, holding my daughter's hand firmly. I'm done with this. I'm getting a divorce. What? What are you talking about? My husband and mother-in-law gasped in shock, their faces a mix of confusion and disbelief. I tried to ignore the chaos and focus on leaving with my daughter, but they blocked our way. What do you mean by divorce? My mother-in-law demanded, her voice rising in disbelief. She glared at both me and my husband, who was clearly caught off guard. It was evident he hadn't been expecting this revelation. I mean exactly what I said. I'm divorcing this man, I replied firmly. What? I didn't hear anything about this, my husband stammered. What's going on? You told me to go ahead and file the papers if I wanted a divorce. Well, I've done just that, I said, my tone unwavering. My husband was left speechless, clearly unable to process the situation. His optimism had clearly blinded him to the reality of our marriage. You weren't serious about this, were you? He finally managed to ask. Of course I was serious, I replied. Thank you for the papers. I've already submitted them. And as for why I'm telling you here, look around. This is exactly why. You've avoided any real conversation about this, and now we're facing it. My husband's face turned red as he realized the full extent of the public humiliation he was enduring. He had avoided discussing our issues, and now the consequences were unavoidable. But my mother-in-law wasn't done. What's this about? I can't believe you're divorcing my son. You must have done something wrong, Erica. I looked at her incredulous. How can you be so sure I'm at fault? Your son is trembling, and you still think it's all my fault? My husband was clearly at a loss for words, flustered by the unexpected revelations. My mother-in-law, still in shock, demanded, how am I going to explain this to others? I turned to Nancy, who had been watching the scene unfold. Nancy, why don't you tell them what you saw? Nancy's cold gaze cut through the tension as she spoke. Even though Dad is cheating on Mom. What? My mother-in-law froze, unable to process the new information. My husband, stunned, could only look at Nancy in disbelief. Why? Nancy asked, her voice trembling. I saw you hugging another woman. What? My husband stammered, clearly caught off guard. It's okay, Nancy, I said gently, though I could see the disgust in her eyes. She no longer wanted anything to do with her father, and it broke my heart a little. I wondered if I should have kept her from coming today, even though she'd insisted on it. Are we done here? I asked, ready to leave. This is false accusation, my husband suddenly blurted. You have no proof. I'm not divorcing you. His defiance caught me off guard. How can you say that? You've always claimed you never loved me. Is this about maintaining appearances? You don't have any proof, he shouted, stuttering as he tried to defend himself. I calmly reached into my bag and pulled out several photos, scattering them across the floor. Here's your proof, I said. The photos showed him walking hand in hand with a young woman. The evidence was undeniable, and he could no longer deny his actions in front of his extended family. His face turned red as he scrambled to gather the pictures. Why did you? He began, but his voice trailed off. I think you've gone too far, I replied. I never condoned cheating. I had hired a private detective to investigate my husband's behavior. The detective not only followed him but also recorded his conversations with the woman, who had spoken freely about my husband's behavior and even made derogatory remarks about me. How did you know that? My husband asked, his face paling. The relatives surrounding us looked on in shock, and my mother-in-law's face was one of disbelief. Mary, I'm not your son anymore, my husband said. Even if I was married to your son, I had no obligation to take care of this house, I said firmly. I'm done. From now on, please contact my lawyer. With that, Nancy and I left. I had already filed for divorce and was pursuing alimony. Although my ex-husband initially resisted, the hard evidence I presented made him concede. I also filed a claim against the woman he was involved with, and she agreed to compensate me. The scandal spread among their relatives and neighbors, causing them considerable embarrassment. My daughter and I embarked on a new chapter, free from the ties that once bound us. As a handmade artist, my business thrived with an influx of online orders. My daughter informed me that our story had even made its way onto social media. I'm finally free from the constraints of my past. Despite the hardships, I now have the opportunity to do what I want, take care of my daughter, and fully enjoy my life. Hey, I need to talk to you about something, I said, gathering my courage. Can we cut back on having your mom over every weekend? My husband let out a deep sigh. Lisa, it feels like you're always saying no to everything. What do you mean by that? I asked, a bit taken aback. You don't want me to build a house. You don't want my mom coming over. You're always against something. That's not what I meant. I tried to explain. Then what did you mean? How much longer do we have to keep waiting? My name is Lisa, and I've been married to Frank for 5 years. We share a common dream, owning our own home. Now that we've saved enough for a down payment, we're finally ready to leave behind renting and move into the home I've always envisioned. Once we're settled, we plan to start a family and raise our children in a place that truly belongs to us. But just as our hopes were growing, a dark cloud appeared on the horizon. My mother-in-law, who had caught wind of our plans, began making some rather unsettling moves. So, I hear you're finally buying a house, she said. Yes, that's right, I replied. Have you already decided on what kind of home you want? Yes, I have an idea of what we want, I said. That's wonderful. If there's anything I can do to help, just let me know. Thank you, I appreciate that. Oh, by the way, have you checked out the showroom near your house? No, we haven't managed to get an appointment there yet, I replied. Well, I'll take care of that for you. We can go together. Actually, I prefer to go with just my husband, I said, trying to be polite. Despite my efforts, my mother-in-law continued to involve herself in our property search. She even started showing up unannounced. I brought you a brochure for some land that's for sale, she said one day, catching me off guard. Thank you very much. My mother-in-law held a dozen leaflets in her hand, eager to share them. How about this one? It's close to the station and spacious enough for 2 families. Wait, did she just say 2 families? I was too stunned to respond, and she continued talking as if nothing was amiss. If the train station isn't nearby, it's inconvenient for everything, and you'll want to be close to a hospital for when you get older. This property is also near a supermarket. It must be hard for you to choose with so many options, right? What started as an offer to help quickly turned into her taking control of the house search. She was making decisions as if she planned to live there too. This is not good at all. I told my husband everything that had happened that night. Oh, I think she might have mentioned something about living together, he said casually. What? You want us all to live together? I asked, surprised. Well, if you're okay with it, I'm not going to push you into anything, don't worry. I felt blindsided by his response. If I'm okay with it? No, I'm not. I couldn't believe he was being so indecisive. When it's time to tell my mother-in-law that we're not living together, I'm going to be the one dealing with the fallout. Why can't he see that? Maybe we should stop building the house, I suggested, feeling frustrated. What? Why? He asked, clearly confused. Because of the way you phrased it. If I refuse to live with her, she'll know I was the one who said no. We're going to be together for a long time, and I don't want things to become awkward. I'd rather not have a house if it means dealing with that. We can raise our kids in a rental and use the down payment we save for their education instead. My husband's panic was evident. Wait a minute, I understand now. I'll tell her no, and we'll move forward with building the house. No, it's fine. You can't even stand up to your mother. I'd never seen him stand up to his mother before. Trust me, I'll handle it, he said, trying to reassure me. Why are you so desperate? He asked, sounding puzzled. I want to live in our own house and raise our children there, I replied. You didn't seem so enthusiastic about it before. That's not true. I was excited. It's hurtful to say otherwise. I feel just as strongly about our children. All right, I understand. My husband promised he would tell his mother no, but given his usual hesitation, I doubted he'd follow through. However, the day after our conversation, my mother-in-law stopped pressuring us and even called to apologize. Lisa, I got scolded by Frank. He told me he wants to live with you alone. I'm sorry for pushing my opinions on you, my mother-in-law said. I was surprised to hear that Frank had actually stood up to her. He could speak his mind when it mattered. Still, I couldn't shake a lingering suspicion. When I told my husband about the apology, he had a satisfied grin on his face. See? When I say I'll speak up, I mean it. What's with that look in your eyes? I asked, puzzled. I was wondering if you really told her, I said, still unsure. Are you doubting me? Isn't that awful? He replied, hurt. I haven't seen you stand up to your mother in 5 years, and you didn't do it in front of me. That's unfair. I tried so hard. You're right, I'm sorry. But you're sweating like crazy. What's going on? Oh, it's just hot. Isn't it a bit warm today? It's the middle of winter. By the way, let's finalize the house contract. You really want to build this house, don't you? Of course I do. That's what we've been saving for. At this point, I had lost interest in building the new house, the dream home I had worked so hard to save for. My enthusiasm had dwindled due to my mother-in-law's behavior and my husband's attitude, making me feel as if all my efforts had been in vain. I found myself stepping back from the idea. Meanwhile, my husband continued to insist on building the house. 6 months had passed since our dispute, and although he kept talking about it, I remained unconvinced. My mother-in-law, who had been quiet, was now growing impatient. She started visiting our house frequently. While she never mentioned the house, her attitude became increasingly arrogant. Both my husband and I work full-time, and we both have weekends off. Lately, my mother-in-law has been coming over to our house every weekend. I could manage if it were just once a month, but her frequent visits are making me uncomfortable. My husband seems to be quite pleased with the arrangement, but it's becoming a problem for me. I'd like to have some peace on Saturdays and Sundays, but she arrives at 7 in the morning and blasts the TV at an incredibly loud volume. If I try to stay in bed, she paces back and forth in front of my room. My husband is busy taking care of her, which should be enough. When I finally gave in and got up at 7:30, she remarked, "How can you sleep in with a guest over? She stays until late on Sunday night, and it's starting to wear me down." My husband remains silent about his mother's behavior, and whenever I think of him, the word divorce crosses my mind. However, I want to avoid that if at all possible. I needed to find a way to improve the situation. "Hey, I need you to stop having your mother over every weekend," I said, expressing my feelings directly. He let out a deep sigh. "Lisa, you always seem to be against everything." "What do you mean by that?" "You don't want to build a house, you don't want my mother visiting. You're against everything." "That's not how I meant it." "Then what did you mean? How long do we have to wait for?" "You just said we. What did you mean by that?" "Who else is waiting?" I asked, confused. "What do you mean?" "You said we just now," I clarified. My husband's face turned red and he began to sweat. "I didn't say that. Maybe I misheard. But we can't build a house if your mother keeps coming over every weekend like this." "Why not?" "Because I can't relax. If my parents came over every weekend, would you be able to rest?" "Your parents won't come. They have such a nice house." "I'm fed up with this nonsense," I said, frustrated. "That's not the issue here," he retorted. "I don't even care about the house anymore. I'm going to invite my parents to stay with us next week." My husband's voice rose. "Absolutely not." "Why not?" "Because it's too exhausting. Don't invite your parents. My mother is the only one who can visit. This is my house too. I'm the head of the house. If you can't follow my rules, then leave." "Are you serious?" "You're completely useless to me. I'm done with you. You can't make my mother happy, and if we can't build a house, she can't live with us." "You promised she wouldn't live with us." "What are you talking about? Once the house was built, we could do whatever we wanted, including having my mother live with us." "What do you mean?" "I've told you this before, and you still don't understand. I planned to have my mother move in once the house was built." I knew it. My mother-in-law didn't back down easily. My husband was plotting with her all along. I see now. All right, I'll leave. I hope you won't regret this, he said. Of course not. Just don't come near me again, I replied firmly. I packed only the essentials and went to my parents' house. They were taken aback by my sudden arrival, but once I explained what had happened, they welcomed me with open arms. This is what family is for, right? I suppose our relationship was damaged from the start when I couldn't trust my husband, I said. Dad, I'm so sorry, I added, feeling the weight of my actions. I understand things didn't work out between you two, but work and personal life are separate issues. Yes, I agree. So my ex-husband and I are now divorced. There were no money claims or financial disputes, just a straightforward division of property. But 3 months have passed, and now my ex-husband is on his knees in front of me. I'm sorry, father-in-law, he says. I'm not your father anymore. Be careful what you call me. Boss, is this a result of me divorcing your daughter? What are you talking about? Why did my ex-husband come all the way to my parents' house and get down on his knees? It's because he received an unwanted transfer. Both of us worked for my father's company, and he seems to believe the transfer was a consequence of our divorce. However, my father made it clear during the divorce that personal matters had no bearing on work decisions. All employees at his company are assigned to regional posts for a few years to enhance their skills, and transfers are never used as a form of punishment. But that explanation doesn't seem to satisfy my ex-husband. Lisa, you need to stop the boss. I thought you told me never to show my face again. I'm sorry, please, he begged. No, this isn't an obligation. I was once in line to be the next president, remember? I can't believe you interrupted me with such nonsense. You're mistaken. I'm still the next president, regardless of our divorce. What? Of course, I'm his daughter. My ex-husband nodded and left our house. The next day, he submitted his resignation, despite people around him trying to explain that the transfer wasn't a demotion. He refused to listen. A few days later, he was found in an unexpected place. I was casually watching a documentary on TV when I saw my ex-husband featured on the program. He appeared in line at a volunteer organization for a meal donation, looking disheveled and poorly dressed. Life can be unpredictable. It made me reconsider the word regret that I once said to him. I'm sure he regrets his actions now. The fact that he was holding 2 meal containers suggested that one was meant for his mother. Although I don't know all the details, it's clear that his life has drastically changed from what it once was. As for me, I'm thriving on my own. My weekdays are filled with work, but I relish my days off. It's a true blessing to sleep soundly without morning disruptions. I am living in a state of happiness and contentment. It was the unexplained coldness of her ex-husband that had caused her so much pain, a pain she struggled to convey to others. She wished she could use that experience as a shield to say no to her in-laws. Lisa, you did an excellent job. I hope you're able to enjoy your time on your own now. One day, as I was preparing dinner in the kitchen, I heard a strange noise from my daughter. Mom, oh no, this can't be, she exclaimed. I quickly turned off the stove and rushed to the dining table where she was sitting. What on earth is this? I gasped in shock. To my surprise, there was a wiretap device on the table. Who could have done this, and why? My name is Gwen, a 37-year-old housewife. I live with my husband, Oscar, and our daughter, Lynn. Mom, hurry up, Lynn urged. Okay, just a second, I replied, trying to calm my nerves. Lynn is a 10-year-old elementary schooler who loves swimming and never misses her weekly lessons. Watching her grow into a kind and cheerful girl fills me with joy. The 3 of us, my daughter, my husband, and I, get along very well and live happily together. But life isn't without its challenges. Our main problem isn't with each other, but with my husband's mother, my mother-in-law. She and my father-in-law live just a 15-minute walk from our house. My mother-in-law dotes on her son and has always been uncomfortable with the idea of him not living by her side. At one point, she insisted that we move in with her. She was relentless, but I was determined to maintain our family's independence. My husband, fed up with her constant interference, told her firmly that we couldn't live with her. However, my mother-in-law didn't give up easily and repeatedly insisted on moving in with us. To appease her, we eventually compromised by moving into a house within walking distance of hers. My father-in-law helped convince her, and for a while, things settled down. Even though we lived nearby, my mother-in-law continued to intrude on our lives. During the holiday season, we always had to visit her because of the proximity. Despite my husband and I trying to maintain our distance, she would use the neighbors to pressure us. Why don't you take care of your mother? Your wife isn't doing her duty. Your mother is in pain, and she went through so much to give birth to you. As the eldest son, it's your responsibility to care for your parents, they would say, echoing her sentiments. Each time, we ended up having to go to her house to keep the peace. I wish she would be as kind to me as she was to her son, but she saw me as an enemy. Every time I saw her, she would pick on me. When you're feeding Oscar such terrible food, I can't believe it. I feel sorry for him. I wish I could cook for him every day, she would sneer. Mom, how can you say such things? Stop it. My husband would always defend me, but her persistence never waned. How can it be that you've been married for 2 years and still haven't had a baby, Gwen? I think you might be infertile, she once said, shocking me with her cruelty. Even my husband was furious. Mom, enough. We're not in a rush. Besides, having a child is a blessing, not something you can force. Don't assume Gwen is infertile based on your feelings. It could just as easily be me, he retorted, with my father-in-law backing him up. Oscar's right. You can't predict when you'll be blessed with a child. Don't look down on Gwen just because you had a baby early, my father-in-law added. My mother-in-law finally calmed down after their intervention, but the peace was short-lived. Soon enough, she resumed her bullying. When our daughter was finally born, my father-in-law was overjoyed to welcome his first granddaughter. I hoped that having a grandchild would soften my mother-in-law's attitude, but her reaction was far from what I expected. What? It's not a boy? Are you kidding me? It's your duty to give birth to a boy since you married the eldest son, she complained, completely disregarding the joy of the occasion. After all the pressure she had put on us to have a child, she now had the audacity to complain because our baby wasn't a boy. My husband and father-in-law were equally appalled by her behavior. It became clear that she simply disliked everything about me. As our daughter grew, my mother-in-law showed little affection for her, and Lynn, even as a child, sensed that her grandmother didn't like her. As a result, she became attached only to her grandfather. Seeing this, my mother-in-law's anger grew, and she began to treat both my daughter and me even worse. Despite Lynn being her son's child, my mother-in-law criticized her character, saying, even though she's Oscar's daughter, she's not of good character. The situation was heartbreaking, and I wondered how much longer we could endure her relentless negativity. I wondered if she was insinuating that Lynn only inherited my worst traits, or worse, that Lynn wasn't even Oscar's child. That was the final straw. Please don't make such accusations. I snapped at my mother-in-law. Lynn is Oscar's and mine. What kind of nerve do you have to say something like that? Oh, you're getting upset like that because you're hiding something, aren't you? She sneered, as if enjoying my anger. Stop it, I shouted. You've gone too far. We're leaving. My father-in-law was out shopping, and Oscar was in the other room on a work call. I quickly got Lynn ready, put on her shoes, and headed to the door. When Oscar noticed us leaving, he came over, surprised. What's going on? What's the matter? I'm sick and tired of your mother's horrible attitude, I replied, my voice shaking with frustration. Did Mom say something again? She started questioning if Lynn is really yours. What? She said what? His face turned red with anger, and he called out to his mother. Mom, are you serious? How can you say such a thing? But she didn't even flinch. I just said what I thought. Oscar and Lynn don't look alike. Are you kidding me? We're leaving, and we're never coming back. Oscar grabbed his things, put on his shoes, and we left the house, heading home in silence. That was ugly, he finally said as we got inside. How insane is she? Does she have any morals at all? I sighed. Lynn's just entering a sensitive age. It's terrible that your mother would say such disgusting things, planting negative thoughts in her head. A little later, my father-in-law called Oscar, asking why we left. When Oscar explained what happened, his father was appalled and promised to give my mother-in-law a stern talking to. But despite their anger, my mother-in-law never stopped bullying me. I was sure she continued to find ways to annoy both me and Lynn. One evening, Oscar turned to me and said, let's stop going to my parents' house. What? But what about the neighbors? They'll start saying things again, telling us to be good to your mother. Then ignore them. The neighbors are just strangers. We don't need to care about their opinions. He was right, and I felt reassured. My mother-in-law might be good at manipulating the neighbors, but as Oscar said, we just needed to ignore them. We used to feel guilty every time one of the neighbors criticized us, but now I didn't care what the outside world thought. We were united as a family, and that was all that mattered. After that, we stopped visiting my in-laws. My mother-in-law tried contacting Oscar, asking why we hadn't come over, but we stood firm. We were done letting her control our lives. I couldn't fathom how she even managed to contact him like that in the first place. Did she not realize she was the cause of all this? Or did she simply want to see her son, knowing full well she was doing the worst possible thing? Regardless, we were resolute. We would never go to my in-laws' house again, and we certainly wouldn't allow my mother-in-law to come to ours. As we started living like this, the neighbors began to meddle, offering their unsolicited opinions. But I didn't pay them any attention anymore. I would politely thank them for their concern and pretend to listen, but inside, I was completely indifferent. Thanks to this newfound distance, we were finally able to live peacefully for a while. My daughter no longer had to see her mean grandmother, and she seemed happier every day. I found myself wishing we had cut ties with my mother-in-law much sooner. By the way, my father-in-law never did anything wrong, so we still met him for dinner occasionally without my mother-in-law's knowledge. My daughter adored her grandfather and loved these dinners with him. We were enjoying our lives and spending happy days together. But then something unexpected happened. One day, as I was preparing dinner in the kitchen, I suddenly heard my daughter make a startled noise. I wondered what she was up to, but I was in the middle of cooking and couldn't step away. I decided I'd ask her about it later. "Mom, I can't get it off," she called out, sounding surprised. "What's going on, honey? Come see this. Hurry. I'm putting the pot on the stove. Just give me a moment. Please just come," she insisted. Sensing her urgency, I turned off the stove and hurried over to the dining table. What? What is this?" To my shock, there was a wiretap sitting right there. "Who did this? And why?" I whispered. "Mom, this can't be happening." My daughter was starting to panic. Quickly, I covered her mouth and typed a message on my phone. "Don't say anything. We don't know who might be listening." She nodded silently, understating the gravity of the situation. There might be other wiretaps in the house, and we had to be careful. I stepped outside and called the police. When they arrived and conducted a thorough search of the house, I learned something truly shocking. They found one wiretap under the dining room table, another in our bedroom, and yet another in my daughter's room. We were horrified. We had no idea how long this had been going on, but someone had been eavesdropping on our private conversations at home. The police explained that the placement of the devices suggested it wasn't the work of an amateur. They warned us that now that the bugs had been discovered and removed, the person responsible might come back to check on them. The police advised us to be very careful and assured us they would increase patrols in the neighborhood. My husband had just left on a business trip that day and wouldn't be back for a while. Given the circumstances, it wasn't safe for my daughter and me to stay in the house alone. We decided to stay at my parents' house until my husband returned. I didn't want to alarm my husband while he was on his business trip, as it might distract him and cause unnecessary worry. I decided it was best to wait until he got home to tell him what had happened. My parents were deeply concerned when they heard that our house had been bugged. They were furious that someone would do something so vile, and insisted that whoever was responsible needed to be caught as soon as possible. My daughter was also very upset and scared. "Mommy, I forgot my stuffed bunny," she said, her voice trembling. "Oh, you did," I replied gently, noticing how close she was to tears. She always slept with that big stuffed rabbit as her pillow, and in her current frightened state, there was no way she'd be able to sleep without it. Seeing her distress, my father immediately suggested we should go and get it for her. "I'll go with you," I agreed. "Thanks, Dad," I said, grateful for his support. Together, my father and I returned to the house. We were both on edge, aware that someone could be lurking around. Moving cautiously, we entered the house and retrieved the stuffed animal from my daughter's room. Just as we were about to leave, we suddenly heard the front door unlock. My father and I froze, covering our mouths to stifle any sound. Footsteps echoed down the hallway, and my heart raced so fast I thought it might burst. My father stood protectively at the entrance to my daughter's room, his eyes fixed on the hallway. The footsteps passed by us and headed into the living room. It became clear that the intruder was likely there to retrieve the bug from the dining room table. My father and I exchanged a look, We needed to get out while we still could. Quietly, he opened the door and peeked into the dining room. What? Oh my God, my father whispered in shock, his eyes widening in disbelief. I whispered angrily to my father, Dad, don't make a sound. He turned to me with a puzzled expression and asked, Is that Oscar? What? I whispered back, shocked by his words. Unable to contain my curiosity, I slowly opened the door and peeked into the living room. To my astonishment, there was my husband checking under the dining table. I couldn't comprehend what was happening. Why was my husband at home when he was supposed to be on a business trip? And why was he examining the spot where the bug had been found? What are you doing? I asked, stepping into the room. He froze, startled, and then turned to me with wide eyes. Oh, what are you doing here? He stammered. That's my question. I shot back, my voice trembling with confusion and anger. I thought you were on a business trip. What's going on here, Oscar? He started to stammer. Oh no, it's just that. Before he could finish, the front door opened, and we heard a high-pitched, familiar voice. Oscar, did you recover the listening device? It was my mother-in-law. Mom, Oscar began, but then he noticed her shocked expression as she finally realized we were standing there. Why? What's going on? I demanded, slowly piecing the situation together. Oscar, you did this with your mother? You bugged our house? Seeing no way out, my husband's shoulders slumped as he began to explain. Because you're having an affair, aren't you? What? I was utterly baffled. What are you talking about? The neighbors, they said they saw you with some guy walking around, letting him into our house during the day and even going into a restaurant together. I stared at him in disbelief. What are you saying? I have no idea what you're talking about. I kept getting reports of your supposed affair from different people, and I started to think you were being unfaithful, he admitted, his voice cracking. Mom even said that Lynn and I don't look alike, so I talked to her about it. She convinced me to bug the house to get evidence of the affair. So I did it, and when the wiretap suddenly stopped transmitting on the day I said I was going on a business trip, I thought something was wrong, so I rushed back to check on it. My mind reeled as his words sunk in. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Unbelievable, I muttered, feeling a surge of anger. You did all of this because you believed baseless rumors. You let your mother manipulate you into thinking I was cheating on you. But when you keep hearing something like that, you start to believe it, don't you? He tried to justify. Don't be ridiculous. I snapped. Do you really think I would do such a thing? If you can't trust me, why did you just hire a private detective or something? And if you doubt that Lynn is your daughter, why not just do a DNA test instead of this insane behavior? Oscar's face crumpled as he realized the gravity of his mistake. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I did terrible things to you. Please forgive me. But it was too late. I shook my head, tears of frustration welling up in my eyes. It's too late to apologize. I can't do this anymore. Let's get a divorce. No, please, he begged, desperation in his voice. I was wrong. We're a family, right? Let's stay together as a family. That's enough, I said coldly. I'm so disappointed in you. I can't stay married to someone who so easily believes rumors. Just then, my mother-in-law interjected with a spiteful tone. Oscar, aren't you glad you're getting rid of this woman? I'm sure she's having an affair, even if she's hiding it. You should get rid of this woman and her daughter once and for all and find someone new, my mother-in-law spat out, even in the middle of such a tense situation. Before I could respond, my father stepped in, shielding me. Why would the neighbors lie like that? Did someone make them say it? What do you think? He stared intently at my mother-in-law. She flinched but quickly retorted, I don't know. Why should I know? My father didn't back down. If this is all based on lies, then it's a serious issue. My daughter could sue the neighbors for slander. That's right, he continued. Because of the neighbors' rumors, Gwen and Oscar's marriage is falling apart. Should we start telling them now that we're going to sue? My mother-in-law instantly panicked. That's too much. They were probably just joking. My father pressed on. A joke? That's even worse. They should be held accountable. Why not? You can't do that, she protested, her voice shaky. Why not? My daughter is being falsely accused of infidelity. People who spread lies like that should be punished, my father declared. He then turned to me. Gwen, let's go. I nodded, slipping on my shoes and heading for the door. But just as we were about to leave, my mother-in-law broke down, tears streaming down her face. It's me, I told her neighbors to give Oscar false information. I stopped in my tracks, shocked. I took off my shoes and turned back to face her. Is that true? She nodded, still on her knees. Yes. I thought that if Oscar divorced you for having an affair, he'd come back to live with me. Oscar's eyes widened in disbelief, and then his face twisted in anger. Mom, you've got to be kidding me. What were you thinking? Don't you feel ashamed? He turned to me. When? I had nothing to do with this. It's all her. But I met his gaze coldly. No, Oscar, you're the one who bugged our house. I don't trust you anymore. Lynn and I are done with you. I'm divorcing you. With that, I left the house with my father, leaving both my husband and mother-in-law slumped on the floor, their faces pale with shock. Later, I went straight to my lawyer to begin divorce proceedings. I also confronted the neighbors, offering them a deal. In exchange for not suing them, they had to tell me every detail of what my mother-in-law had asked them to do. They confessed everything, confirming that she had orchestrated the entire scheme. As a result, the court accepted my claim, and I was awarded alimony and child support. My mother-in-law's actions even led to her own downfall. Her husband divorced her and kicked her out of the house. She tried to cling to Oscar, but he wanted nothing to do with her after realizing she had caused our divorce. Now, she's living alone in a small apartment, working part-time to make ends meet. As for me, I got a new job and started working full-time. My parents helped me take care of Lynn, who has moved on from her father and is putting all her energy into swimming, something she's loved for a long time. I'm determined to work hard and build a good life for her, focusing on what matters most, her happiness and well-being. Oh, did I forget to mention that I changed the reservation time? You didn't show up, so I boarded the train without you. I could hear a woman's laughter in the background, sitting next to my husband, Harry, on the other end of the phone. How could you do that? Come back right now, I demanded, my voice trembling with disbelief. It's your fault for being so lazy that you got left behind, he replied casually. You can deal with the rest on your own. Besides, I canceled your ticket. It was too expensive to waste. That's not what I meant. I tried to explain, but he cut me off. We're going through a tunnel now, so I'm hanging up. You should just give up and head home. Without any hesitation, Harry ended the call. No, this isn't what I meant at all. If things keep going like this, we're headed for disaster. I've been married to Harry for 5 years. We tied the knot after our son Tom was born, and now Tom is 6. In the beginning, the 3 of us were happy together, but over time, Harry grew distant. He stopped paying attention to Tom, despite his earlier promises to protect us. I'll take care of you and Tom, Harry had once vowed, but now I wonder if those words were just a way to manipulate me. Harry claims he's too busy with work, ignoring our son completely. When I urge him to be more involved, he dismisses me entirely. Recently, his words have turned cold and cruel. The other day, he even mentioned divorce in front of Tom. I'm busy with work. You're just a housewife, right? My house, my rules. If you don't like it, why don't you just divorce me? I'll agree to it any time. After all, for a woman like you, a divorce will be the end. You can't survive without my money, so don't even think about talking back to me. I wanted to argue, but as a housewife, I felt powerless. If I fought back, it could really lead to a divorce. I've thought about leaving Harry many times before, but the idea of our son's future always held me back. No matter how much society claims to be more accepting of single parents, the reality is often different. They're still judged and looked down upon. What's the right thing to do? These thoughts weighed on me every day, leaving me physically and mentally exhausted. One day, as I returned home after dropping Tom off at daycare, I ran into my neighbor, Sarah. Are you okay, Janet? You don't look well. Is your son in kindergarten? I can't believe you're this tired when they take care of him from morning till evening. Have you been overworking yourself? She asked, her tone laced with condescension. If you had the money and attention I do, your life would be so much more fun. But then again, if I were as clueless as you, I'd have a hard time too. I feel sorry for you. Sarah's husband works away from home, but from what I've heard, he makes a lot of money. She's always dressed in luxurious brand-name clothes and flaunts expensive accessories. But despite all that, she lacks elegance, and whenever I see her, she's constantly bragging about herself, her husband, and her son. She may not be a bad person, but I've never really liked her. Everyone always seems to have something to say, but I just wish she could understand my feelings, even a little. Normally, I would have shrugged off her comments, but that day I was exhausted. I couldn't help but vent about my husband. No, I'm just a housewife, so I'm not tired from work, I admitted, feeling drained. But my husband is always complaining about how busy he is and shows no interest in our son. Lately, he's been so irritated that he even talks about divorce in front of our child. I feel sorry for Tom. The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted sharing my frustrations. When I looked at Sarah, her expression had hardened. You're a full-time housewife, and you dare to criticize your husband, the one who provides for your family. I feel sorry for him. Her voice dripped with disdain. I've never complained like that. My husband works hard, and as a wife, it's only natural that you should take good care of your children. This is why women like you struggle. She took the opportunity to look down on me and boast about what a good wife she was compared to me. I knew she would react this way. Maybe it's best not to get too involved with her. I quickly wrapped up the conversation with a polite greeting and hurried home. But that night, to my surprise, Sarah suddenly showed up at my door. I hadn't invited her, but she invited herself in. I'd like to get to know you better, Janet, she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. How about having dinner with me tonight? I love cooking, but my husband is incredibly picky, so I thought I'd visit you now that we're friends and learn some new recipes. Isn't it great that I'm motivated? I'll eat anything, so could you whip something up for us? Without waiting for an invitation, Sarah and her child barged into our home, clearly intending to stay for dinner. My husband, always the friendly one, welcomed them in without a second thought, but it was me who ended up serving them. Sarah's children ran wild, doing whatever they pleased, while she and Harry chatted endlessly, with Sarah proudly boasting about her kids. I was seething inside. We were finally seated at the table, ready to eat, when Sarah brought up our conversation from lunch. Harry, you're really doing your best, you know. You should make sure to remind your wife of that. She turned to me, a smug smile on her face. I told her that since you work so hard, it's only natural that she should take good care of the child. I'm perfect at it for our family. I work hard every day to take care of the house and the kids for my husband. I could never complain about that. Harry looked at me, his eyes narrowing in disbelief. Janet, did you really complain to her about this? I can't believe you. We're only getting by because of what I earned. I swallowed my frustration and forced myself to agree. Yes, you're right. Just as I thought the conversation might end there, Sarah suddenly suggested, let's go on a trip to treat your husband. The kids will be graduating soon, and it's perfect timing, don't you think? My husband's working away from home, so my kids are lonely. It'll be more fun with more people. If you're okay with it, I'd love to go with you. I expected Harry to shut down the idea, but to my surprise, he seemed pleased. Sarah had been standing up for him all evening, and now even the kids, pure and innocent, were caught up in the excitement. Everyone except me was in the mood for a trip. Leave all the preparations to Janet, Harry suggested. She's a stay-at-home mom, so she's got all the time in the world for that. I could barely contain my frustration. That's impossible, I finally said. With your salary, we can't afford to pay for a trip for 5 people. Besides, it's a one-parent situation. You're blaming your own son. I can't believe you. Harry's expression darkened. You don't appreciate me enough, do you? You're an absolute disgrace. Sarah, sensing the tension, chimed in. That's right, Janet. You don't appreciate enough at all. Do you even know your own worth? Do you really think you're some great person? Her words cut deep, and I realized just how isolated I had become. I swallowed the words that were on the tip of my tongue, and after apologizing to both of them, reluctantly agreed to plan the trip. Your neighbor is struggling without her husband, so you better handle all the work, Harry said dismissively. I couldn't believe it. Who do you think has been raising our son all on her own? I wanted to shout, but I bit my tongue, trying to suppress my growing frustration. As I began organizing the hotels and planning every detail, it became clear that the trip they wanted would cost several $1,000s. If I spent that kind of money, my savings would be completely wiped out. I've always been the one providing for us, I told Harry. You should at least cover the cost this time. If you don't have it, then go into debt or borrow from your parents, he replied coldly. But remember, if you borrow money, you better be ready to pay it back over a lifetime. No matter what I said, Harry wasn't going to listen. I gave up trying to argue and focused on finding a way to make the trip happen. After some trial and error, using point cards and coupons, I finally managed to plan something within budget. I secured a nice hotel, and Sarah was very pleased with the arrangements. See how great my ideas are, she said to Harry, beaming. I thought of every detail to make sure you could have a wonderful getaway. Even though I had done all the work, Sarah took full credit, speaking as if she had planned everything herself. My husband, of course, was thrilled with her presentation. "How useless you are, Janet," he said, a note of contempt in his voice. "Sarah is so talented. Shame on you for making me feel like this." I felt the sting of his words, the weight of blame that always seemed to fall on me. This was never the life I had imagined, but still, I couldn't bring myself to consider divorce, not for Tom's sake. I kept telling myself to stay calm as the day of the trip arrived. With Harry and Tom by my side, we headed to the bus station. Oh yay, the bus. Tom's eyes sparkled with excitement. It had been so long since we traveled anywhere. I had the tickets ready, and we waited at the station for Sarah and her kids to arrive. While we were waiting, Tom needed to use the restroom, so I took him quickly, thinking nothing of it. But when we returned, Harry was gone, leaving only our luggage behind. Panic began to set in. Where did he go? And where was Sarah? Time passed, and the bus was about to depart, but Harry was still nowhere to be found. I tried calling him, but there was no answer. With no other options, I decided to call Sarah. "Oh, I changed the bus time," Sarah said nonchalantly. "I didn't tell you. We got on already. I guess your husband didn't mention it either. He said he wanted to relax and ride on the premium limousine bus, so I switched it." I asked her to pass the phone to Harry, and when my husband finally picked up, his voice was filled with irritation. "Honestly, you and Tom just get in the way," he snapped. "I'm going to enjoy this trip with Sarah, who actually understands me." I tried to keep my voice steady. "Please just wait for us. We'll be there soon." But he cut me off. "That's not what I mean." And with that, he hung up, leaving me stunned and heartbroken. I turned to Tom, trying to mask my despair. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I guess we won't be able to go on the trip after all." Tom looked up at me with those innocent eyes, full of understanding. "It's okay, Mommy. As long as you're here, it'll be okay." His kindness nearly brought me to tears. I forced a smile and said, "Let's go home today. I'll take you somewhere better next time," I promised Tom as we headed back home. As we approached our house, I noticed a man in a suit standing at Sarah's door. He looked serious, and I couldn't help but wonder who he was and what he wanted with Sarah. But the last thing I wanted was to get tangled up in her business, so I pretended not to notice him and kept walking. Just as I was about to pass by, the man turned to me and started speaking. I hurried away, unsure of what he wanted, but the encounter left me uneasy. 3 days later, Harry called, his voice filled with urgency. "What happened to the hotel payment? Get me $3,000 right now." $3,000? There was no way I could come up with that kind of money. "Why didn't you settle the bill in advance?" I asked, my frustration boiling over. "You're so stupid," he snapped. "Come here right now." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You asked me to leave, and now you want me to come." I had enough of his nonsense. "I got us that hotel through my father's contacts. If I don't go there, they'll charge the regular rate, $3,000. When Harry had told me not to join them on the trip, I had reached out to my father and informed the hotel of the situation. I wasn't going to let them take advantage of me. "If you don't pay up now, we're getting a divorce," Harry threatened. "Oh really? That's fantastic," I replied, unable to hide the smile spreading across my face. I wanted a divorce anyway. Harry seemed taken aback. "Really?" "Yes, really. It's perfect timing. I'm sure Sarah will be much happier with you. Thanks for doing me a favor." I could practically hear Sarah chiming in, full of smug satisfaction. Unlike some idiot wife, Sarah really understands me. I couldn't help but laugh. Their self-importance was absurd. "Well, you have no choice but to pay the hotel fee yourself." Harry fell silent. Of course, he did. His salary was only $700, despite his pretenses of working at a major company. We managed to cover the rent where we live now with passive income from the property I bought when I was still single. Yet Harry only contributed about $300 a month, acting as if that was enough to cover all our food expenses. "Honey, you shouldn't lie," I said, my voice tinged with frustration. "Have you been lying? You have, haven't you? I can't stay with a man who doesn't make enough money. This means my husband is way better." I said nothing more and handed the phone to the man standing beside me. "I'm divorcing you, Janet. You've been cheating on me, haven't you?" "Why are you there, honey? I thought you were away working." Harry's voice faltered with confusion and panic. To my surprise, the man in the suit who had spoken to me 3 days ago was Sarah's husband, Jack. 3 days earlier, when I returned home after being left behind at the bus stop, Jack had approached me, having just returned from work himself. Upon hearing the situation, Jack had apologized repeatedly and revealed that Harry and Sarah were having an affair. He explained that he had come home unexpectedly to gather evidence of their betrayal. I asked my father to contact the hotel and arrange for pictures to be taken of Sarah and Harry together during their stay. The images show them sharing light kisses, with Sarah clinging to Harry's arm and acting overly affectionate. Seeing Harry so happy and confident with her was sickening. Luckily, I already had the divorce papers, as Harry had previously threatened to divorce me and had thrown the signed papers at me in anger. As soon as I confirmed the affair, I decided to file the papers and finalize the divorce. It was a decision I made after carefully consulting with my child and thinking it through. And then, finally, I was free from Harry. I was told that Sarah's kids weren't at the hotel, so I quickly went searching for them and discovered they had been left at Sarah's parents' house. When Jack arrived to pick them up, he showed Sarah's parents the evidence of the affair and the photographic proof. Overwhelmed with guilt, they apologized to Jack with tears in their eyes. As we awaited a response from Harry and Sarah, who had betrayed both Jack and me, Sarah tried to justify her actions with absurd excuses. She claimed that she pretended to have an affair with Harry to provoke a reaction from me, hoping it would make me change my attitude. Her excuses were pathetic, and it was clear she had orchestrated everything deliberately, leaving her kids behind while planning to enjoy the affair with Harry funded by my money. Jack was deeply apologetic and offered to cover the cost of the trip from his savings, pleading for forgiveness. I couldn't simply accept his apology, though. It wasn't that easy. Harry, meanwhile, was threatened with legal action by the hotel staff for failing to settle the bill. His savings were insufficient, and he had to beg Sarah's parents for help. Eventually, they covered the hotel expenses, allowing him to return home safely. That same day, I hired an attorney to formalize the divorce, seek alimony, request custody of my son, and demand child support. I told Harry, who argued that Tom still needed a father, that he had been neglecting Tom and leaving him behind. It was clear to me that it was not in Tom's best interest to be with him. Jack also managed to secure his divorce without issues. Sarah, who resisted leaving Jack, found herself in a dire situation. She tried to stay in the house but was forced to move out when she couldn't afford the rent. Jack demanded alimony, and Sarah's financial situation deteriorated. She was evicted after staying too long and incurred a penalty fee. She eventually moved back in with her parents, where they were less than pleased with her situation. As for me, I felt a sense of relief and contentment. I could finally live peacefully with my son. I even invited Jack and his kids to stay at the hotel, and seeing the kids' smiling faces made me genuinely happy. I wish this peaceful life could last forever.
My name is Elizabeth Thompson, and I'm 27 years old. I've been married to James for 5 years, and together we have a 4-year-old son named Jack. Initially, I worked full-time after our marriage, but now I transitioned to a part-time role at the same workplace where James is employed. James and I began dating due to his persistent pursuit, which eventually led to our marriage. However, things changed after we tied the knot. James, once kind, became domineering, adopting a mentality of complacency once he had caught me. His younger sister, Jennifer, who is about to turn 20, became a frequent presence in our lives. Despite our age difference, James indulged her every whim, making me feel like a mere housemate catering to her demands. Jennifer's visits were often untimely and unannounced, and she never brought anything with her. Upon arrival, she would ignore me, as if it were a normal occurrence. James, on the other hand, welcomed her warmly, offering her our meals, even if they were meant for just the 3 of us. Whenever I raised concerns about the limited food, James would insist that I share my portion with Jennifer, blaming me for not anticipating her arrival. Although Jennifer would offer insincere apologies when prompted by James, it was evident that she enjoyed his unwavering support and care more than any genuine remorse. I found myself constantly sidelined, even during meals, as Jennifer would exclude both Jack and me from the table, insisting on private conversations with James. This exclusion extended to everyday tasks, as James and Jennifer seemed content to let me handle everything alone. I'd often felt like an invisible presence in my own home, relegated to the role of a housemaid while they enjoyed each other's company. One evening, as I was preparing to bathe Jack, James demanded that I fetch a specific dessert from a downtown bakery, despite the late hour. When I hesitated, citing Jack's bedtime routine, Jennifer joined in, pressuring me to comply with James's wishes. Fearing further confrontation, I reluctantly agreed, leaving Jack behind as I rushed to fulfill their request. As I stepped out of the house, I overheard James threatening me with divorce if I dared to defy him again, loud enough for Jack to hear. Despite his tender age, Jack's concerned expression mirrored my own fears and frustrations. I fought back tears as I turned to Jack, asking him, "What kind of cake do you want, Jack?" His eyes, cloudy with disappointment, lit up as he replied, "Mommy, I want a cake with lots of apples." We chatted animatedly about cake flavors on our way to the bakery, momentarily distracting me from the hurtful words. Arriving just before closing time, we found the selection limited. Nonetheless, I purchased 2 slices of strawberry sponge cake and 1 slice of the fruit-covered cake Jack desired. Eager to fulfill his wish, back home, I set the cakes on plates and served James and Jennifer before attending to Jack. To my dismay, Jennifer commented, "That cake looks more delicious," eyeing Jack's choice. James, without hesitation, swapped Jack's cake for Jennifer's, dismissing Jack's protest. When Jack cried out, James callously stated, "I bought that cake with my own money, so you don't have the right to choose." Enraged by his cruelty, I confronted them, only to be met with James's threat of divorce once again. Jack, his tears subsiding, looked at me with concern. After a moment's hesitation, he bravely began to eat the cake Jennifer was supposed to have. "Mummy, this cake is delicious. I'm glad I got this one," Jack forced a smile, masking his true feelings. Seeing 3 adults imposing such hardship on a child stirred something within me. In response to Jack's feigned enjoyment, I suggested we eat in another room, away from the toxic atmosphere. Despite James's protests, I took Jack to the other room, allowing him to savor his cake in peace. Ignoring my husband and Jennifer, we enjoyed our time together, finding solace in each other's company. That night, we slept in Jack's bed, finding comfort in our bond. The next morning, as I awoke to start the day, Jennifer had already departed. While tending to James and Jack, I heard Jack crying. Rushing to him, I discovered his porcelain piggy bank, a gift from my father, shattered, its contents missing. Every night, Jack would bid goodnight to that piggy bank, a cherished routine now shattered. I had watched Jack bid goodnight to his piggy bank the previous evening, a small ritual he cherished. With a sinking feeling, I suspected James, who was in the living room, might know something about its sudden demise. So without delay, I questioned him. His response was callous, lacking any hint of remorse. She just needed a bit of money, so she broke the piggy bank, he stated indifferently, as if it were inconsequential. As Jack cried, I tried to console him, but soon found myself overcome with tears, unable to hold back the flood of emotion. I could endure the mistreatment from James and Jennifer, but seeing Jack left unprotected and wondering what he meant to James filled me with a sadness and anger I had never known. A mix of emotions surged within me, overwhelming my composure. As Jack and I wept, James chided, "Don't make me feel gloomy first thing in the morning," his words laced with irritation. Losing my patience, I confronted him openly, condemning his actions. "Don't you think what you did is wrong, even seeing Jack crying like this?" I exclaimed, breaking my resolve to shield Jack from marital discord. James, without a word, retrieved a document from the bedroom, a divorce form. "Shoving it at me," he declared. "If you're not satisfied with what I say and do, let's get a divorce," before storming off to work. Jack, who had never before cried over matters involving James and Jennifer, had been inconsolable since last night. I, too, had surpassed the limits of my patience. "Jack, let's take a break from daycare today, okay?" I suggested, hoping to provide him some comfort. With a resounding yay, Jack eagerly agreed, thrilled at the prospect of spending the date with me. As he nestled on my knee, his innocent gaze filled me with a sense of serenity, reminding me of the boundless patience harbored within a child's heart. Together, we decided to indulge in a day of play to release the pent-up frustrations that weighed heavily upon us. Though I knew it would inconvenience my work, I felt it was the best course of action for Jack. After explaining the situation to my employer, we spent the day at the park, exhausting ourselves with laughter and games. By lunchtime, we returned home, where Jack, unusually clingy, nestled in my lap like a baby, finding solace in our shared embrace. I had originally planned to tackle some household chores while Jack napped. However, sensing the significance of the day, I decided to seek solace in watching Jack's peaceful slumber instead. Suddenly, the sound of the front door unlocking startled me. It was too early for James to be home. Hastily grabbing a nearby bag, I retreated to the bedroom closet, cradling Jack in my arms. Straining my ears, I discerned a familiar voice, Jennifer. She seemed to be searching for something, her rummaging filling the air with tension. Peeking through the slightly opened closet door, I observed Jennifer's actions and listened to her muttered frustrations. After a flurry of noisy activity, she made a phone call, expressing her inability to find what she was looking for. With a resigned sigh, she mentioned bro, before finally leaving and locking the door behind her. Emerging from the closet, I gently laid Jack on the bed, pondering the intrusion. What could James and Jennifer be searching for? And why did Jennifer have a key? I felt a wave of unease, as if James had become a stranger. In a rush, I packed Jack's essentials into the bag I had grabbed. Just as I finished, Jack stirred awake. Jack, let's go to Grandpa's house, I said, taking his hand and hastily making our way to the station. Within moments, we were on a train headed to my parents' home, just 2 stops away. Arriving unannounced, my parents were surprised to see us. Jack wasted no time in playing with the family dog, his laughter easing my tension. As I explained the unsettling events to my parents, I couldn't shake the feeling of fear that lingered. I wondered if Jennifer's search was for something personal, perhaps my banking card from my single days. I became increasingly convinced that the missing item Jennifer and possibly James were searching for was indeed my banking card from my single days. This suspicion stemmed from the fact that I had once run a successful online shop for handmade goods, which had flourished with the help of friends I'd invited into the business. As my shop gained popularity and recognition, I had made plans for my trusted friends to manage it while I focused on motherhood. Balancing part-time office work with my responsibilities at home, I had kept my role as the company's president hidden from James. Despite his knowledge of my entrepreneurial past, I hadn't disclosed my continued involvement in the business. This secrecy stemmed from issues that arose after our marriage. James, who had a habit of spending his entire salary with no savings, had pressured me to become a full-time homemaker. Unwilling to accept his terms, we had settled on my working part-time. However, he had insisted I sign a contract limiting my claims to marital property, leaving me financially vulnerable. Throughout our marriage, I had received only a meager allowance for household expenses, covering the child's needs from my own earnings. James' presumption that I still had savings from my single days likely fueled his and Jennifer's search for my banking card. Nevertheless, I had taken precautions to safeguard my assets. I had a separate savings account for our child, to which I regularly contributed. The banking card they sought would yield nothing, as I had stored it in the family safe at my parents' home, following my father's advice. However, another concern arose when Jack tearfully confessed to breaking a piggy bank gifted by my father, failing to save money as promised. This infuriated my father, who was on the verge of confronting James when my mother intervened, urging caution. With no concrete evidence, acting rashly could worsen the situation, especially given James's casual mentions of divorce. This insight prompted me to reassess the situation, considering the implications of my husband's actions and Jennifer's unexpected intrusion. Fearing that James might exploit any perceived wrongdoing on our part to his advantage in the divorce, I made the decision to record their conversation, hoping to uncover their true intentions. In the meantime, my parents sought advice from a trusted family lawyer, a longtime friend of my father. Upon our return home, I began preparing dinner as usual, with my phone discreetly recording the unfolding events. True to expectations, James's first question was about the whereabouts of the banking card. When I pressed for an explanation, the conversation quickly escalated. He grew visibly agitated, demanding all my part-time earnings, citing my sister's supposed troubles as justification. Refusing to comply, I explained that I was saving for our child's future. In response, James thrust divorce papers at me, accusing me of arrogance and implying his sister's importance over Jack's well-being. Silently, I halted my dinner preparations, stashing the divorce papers in the bag I had packed earlier. Taking Jack's hand, I headed for the door, ignoring James' ultimatum. He warned me not to return, emphasizing his seriousness about the divorce, citing his discomfort with Jennifer's unrestricted access to our home. Leaving behind the familiarity of our home, I was bombarded with calls and emails from James, all of which I ignored as we made our way to my parents' house. There, I shared the recording with them and presented the divorce papers James had given me. Discussing our options, my parents acknowledged the potential harm a divorce could inflict on Jack's tender heart. Lost in contemplation, Jack's innocent request for food broke through the tension. My mother swiftly prepared his favorite dish, hamburgers, tears welling in my eyes as I realized the depth of my emotions. The floodgates of my emotions burst open, and I found myself unable to stem the tears. Jack's enjoyment of the hamburger was palpable, his grin stretching from ear to ear as he expressed his wish to have Grandma's hamburgers every day. "It's because Grandma fills them with so much love," he proclaimed, offering me a bite-sized piece with an earnest smile. As I tasted the familiar flavors, Jack's tender words melted my heart even further. "This hamburger is filled with love. Isn't it tasty, Mommy? Please don't cry," he pleaded, his concern touching me deeply, but his compassion only brought forth more tears from me. Sensing my distress, my father intervened, explaining to Jack that my tears were tears of joy, moved by his thoughtful gesture. He reassured Jack that family moments like these were precious and brought immense happiness. In a poignant moment, Jack expressed his understanding, feeling more love from our family than from his father. Embracing the concept of divorce with a maturity beyond his years, he found solace in the warmth of our family. Even back at my parents' house, Jack found comfort in our aging dog Max, declaring him as his little brother. With a sense of resolution, I made the decision to proceed with the divorce, knowing it was the best path for our family's well-being. The following day, as Jack slept soundly beside my father and Max, I shared a bed with my mother, finding solace in the familiar comfort of her presence. We reminisced about cherished childhood memories until sleep claimed us. Upon waking, I braced myself for the flurry of messages from James. Over 200 missed calls and emails awaited me, ranging from harsh criticisms to desperate pleas for reconciliation. Despite the uncertainty, I remained steadfast in my decision to prioritize the happiness and stability of our family. Feeling the weight of the situation, I switched off my phone once again, temporarily shutting out the chaos of messages and calls. Later that afternoon, my lawyer arrived, and we delved into the intricacies of my predicament, solidifying my resolve to proceed with the divorce. With solemnity, we signed the necessary documents, setting the wheels of legal separation in motion. The following day, my lawyer met with James to discuss the terms of our divorce. 2 days later, he returned to my parents' house with updates. The outcome was revealing and disheartening. Jennifer's troubles ran deep, stemming from a shopping addiction and involvement with questionable establishments. James, acting as her guarantor, had been entangled in her financial mess. Their plan to utilize my savings to alleviate their debts was laid bare. Despite his earlier resistance to the divorce, James appeared to have a change of heart, expressing regret and sorrow. He agreed to a fair child support arrangement for Jack, acknowledging his responsibility. In a brief but emotional conversation, James confessed his misguided priorities and misplaced loyalty to Jennifer. He lamented the strained relationship with Jack and expressed a desire for reconciliation. However, I remained resolute in my decision to move forward with the divorce, firmly closing the door on any chance of reconciliation. After our conversation, I embraced a fresh start, leaning on the support of my parents as I navigated the transition. Jack's well-being remained my priority, and I ensured his smooth transition to a new daycare. Meanwhile, I revitalized my career as a businesswoman, seizing the opportunity for personal growth and empowerment. As for James and Jennifer, I could no longer remain silent about their actions. I informed my in-laws, who, in a justified fury, decided to sever ties with them. Now living in modest circumstances, James and Jennifer faced the consequences of their choices, their once strong bond now fractured by blame and resentment. Their downfall served as my own form of retribution, a reminder of the consequences of betrayal and greed. I've made a significant decision regarding the $3 million. It's decided to split it between my mother and myself. This resolution came swiftly after my father's funeral. Robert, after examining the inheritance documents without seeking permission, remarked to me, "Kelly, don't be too greedy." Amidst thoughts of finally quitting my job, gratitude flooded my mind for the caring old man. "Are you referring to my dad?" I blurted out inadvertently, ignoring my confusion. Robert and my mother-in-law enthusiastically discussed plans to purchase a new car and indulge in shopping. Faced with this unexpected development, my emotions reached a boiling point. Burdened with household chores and insulted by their remarks about my father, I couldn't bear to continue living with Robert and my mother-in-law. Suppressing my anger, I forced a smile and replied, "Sure, feel free to use the money as you and my mother-in-law please." I am Kelly Cohan, a 38-year-old housewife, working alongside my husband. My parents, both doctors, ran a well-reputed clinic in our hometown. As an only child, I was showered with love. After graduating from the School of Pharmacy, I secured a job at a major pharmaceutical company. Though my parents wished I had become a doctor, they respected my decision. 10 years ago, my mother tragically died in an accident, leaving my father and me devastated. During those trying times, Robert, my then boyfriend, supported me. We met through a mutual friend, and 2 years after my mother's passing, Robert proposed. Robert was an ordinary salaryman in the food and beverage industry, but I believed we could overcome any challenge and find happiness together. My father was overjoyed when I shared news of our engagement. "I've heard how Robert supported you, Kelly. Thank you so much. Please continue to take care of her," he said, facing Robert with sincerity. Standing next to Robert, I felt a mixture of emotions. Immersed in a wave of happiness, we visited Robert's family home the following week to announce our impending marriage. His mother, adorned in flashy makeup and divorced from Robert's father, scrutinized me with an air of rudeness. "Marriage, huh? You're Robert's choice for you? Isn't she a plain choice for you, and she's older, right? Wouldn't a younger and prettier girl be better for you?" she said, evaluating me without any restraint. Quickly, Robert retorted, "Mom, you know I'm in pharmaceuticals, right? Kelly works there." Her father is a doctor and runs his practice. Instead of highlighting my character, Robert emphasized the financial advantages. In response, his mother's expression transformed into one of satisfaction. "Oh, Robert, you should have told me such important things earlier. That changes everything. I happily approve of the marriage. Nice to meet you, Kelly." "Thank you," she declared, granting her approval. With Robert overjoyed at his mother's acceptance, I couldn't shake off a lingering sense of unease. Despite the smooth proceedings and approval from Robert's mother, as we were about to register our marriage, my father, a doctor and real estate investor, presented me with an apartment in a luxury building in New York City as a wedding gift. Excitedly, I informed Robert, "Dad has given me this apartment as a wedding gift. It's our new home. Let's live here happily and peacefully together." Robert smiled, and our married life commenced. However, post-marriage, I began to notice something disconcerting. Robert, having lived with his parents until then, seemed almost incapable of handling household chores. He couldn't cook, didn't know how to operate the washing machine, and showed no interest in learning. Garbage would be left scattered around with no effort to dispose of it properly. While my intention was to conscientiously share household responsibilities, Robert's careless attitude only heightened my dissatisfaction. In the initial year of our marriage, I willingly took on all the household duties, despite some complaints, considering we were still in the honeymoon phase. However, the combination of work exhaustion and struggling to keep up with chores pushed me to my limit in our second year. Deciding it was time for a serious conversation, I bravely expressed my dissatisfaction to Robert. To my dismay, his response lacked gratitude or reflection. "I'm tired from work too. You're much better at chores than I am, right? It's better if you do them since I'm not good at it," he dismissed just like that. Consequently, Robert hardly contributed to the chores, leaving me to bear the brunt of our household responsibilities. But that wasn't the sole issue. After marrying Robert, I discovered that his mother harbored some peculiar ideas. Robert, not particularly interested in seasonal events, led me to send a quality scarf and carnations to his mother for Mother's Day. Despite selecting a nice scarf from a department store, his mother's displeased call criticized it as not being from a famous brand, deeming it absurd to send such a no-name item. Attempting to explain its quality proved futile, as she insisted on items from a very famous luxury brand. Stunned by her reaction, I reported this to Robert upon his return home. Instead of empathizing, he nonchalantly said, "What? Just do as she said." Robert failed to take my side, and from that point on, we started giving her cash as she demanded. By our 5th year of marriage, her frequent visits became a regular occurrence, always finding reasons to ask for money. Despite this, Robert, without any complaints, would always smile and comply with his mother's financial requests. I held a job while Robert's income remained limited and small, making our daily life just barely manageable. Desperation drove me to dip into our savings to cut living expenses. Despite my frustrations, I understood Robert's deep affection for his mother, who had supported me during tough times. She was the mother of someone important to me, and with that thought, I endured. Now, in our 8th year of marriage, I continued to handle all the household chores and kept giving money to my mother-in-law. One day, amidst this routine, my father, whom I hadn't seen in a while, unexpectedly called me. The story he shared during our rare meeting was shockingly unexpected. He revealed that he was suffering from terminal cancer and treatment was no longer possible. Overwhelmed with shock, tears spilled from my eyes. My father gently stroked my head, just as he did when I was a child, saying, "Kelly, this is fate. Let us accept it." Quietly, I questioned him, "Dad, why even you?" Thus, my days became a juggling act of work, household duties, and visits to my father's hospital. While work allowed some flexibility, managing the household was not easy. When I told Robert that my first priority would be caring for my father, he showed no reaction or willingness to help. "Well, it's tough with your father's sudden condition. Please do your best," was the only thing Robert said. He visited my father in the hospital only once. My father's care consumed all my time, leaving no room to spare for Robert. If I ever had a moment to worry about him, I prioritized my father. One day, as my father lay in his hospital bed, he suddenly asked, "Kelly, how is your marriage with Robert going?" Caught off guard, thoughts of Robert's demeanor at home and his mother's behavior flooded my mind. Unable to answer properly, I hesitated. Sensing my turmoil, my father comforted me, saying, "Kelly, you don't have to endure. Think about your happiness. Don't worry, you won't have any hardships after I'm gone." Tears flowed uncontrollably as my father silently and firmly held my hand. 3 months later, the inevitable moment arrived. My father passed away quietly, engulfing me in immense sorrow. Amidst funeral arrangements, Robert showed no interest in my grief and offered no help. Despite this, I was too consumed with preparations to notice. Many friends and acquaintances attended my father's funeral, making it a heartfelt farewell, even for the indifferent Robert and his mother. The day after the funeral, a lawyer called about my father's inheritance. Arranging a meeting, I listened to the surprising explanation. After deducting taxes like inheritance tax, my father's estate amounted to over $3 million. He had not only earned income as a doctor but also invested in real estate, leaving behind a vast fortune to be inherited by me, his only daughter. Wrapped in surprise and gratitude, yet trembling at the thought of handling such a huge amount of money, I stood on the threshold of a new chapter in my life. Upon returning home, I delved into the inheritance process. Spreading out the documents received from the lawyer on my desk, I tiredly read through them, feeling overwhelmed by exhaustion. Drifting off on the sofa for a brief moment, I awoke to the cheerful voices of Robert and his mother in the distance. "Huh? Robert and mother too? When did you come?" I inquired, still groggy. Approaching me with a beaming smile, Robert exclaimed, "Yes, Kelly, well done." Confused by his sudden excitement, I noticed the inheritance papers in his hand, the same documents I had been reviewing. "Wait, don't just read those without asking," I said, shocked and angry at Robert for looking through the documents without permission. Raising my voice, I expressed my displeasure. However, my mother-in-law, unconcerned, happily chimed in, "Wow, an inheritance of $3 million. Isn't that amazing? Now we can live comfortably for the rest of our lives." Confused by her sudden remark, I couldn't comprehend the shift in attitude. Robert then turned serious and continued, "By the way, about this $3 million, I decided that it will be split between me and my mom. It was right after my father's funeral." Having looked at the documents related to the inheritance I was supposed to receive without permission, Robert remarked, "Kelly, don't be too greedy." "Oh, now I can finally quit my job. I have to thank the doting old man." "Doting old man? Are you talking about my dad?" I accidentally blurted out. Ignoring my confusion over this sudden turn of events, Robert and my mother-in-law excitedly discussed buying a new car and going shopping. At that moment, I couldn't hold back my emotions any longer. I teetered on the brink of exploding, burdened with household chores and enduring insults directed at my father. Summoning all my composure, I managed a forced smile and replied, "Sure, use the money as you and my mother-in-law please." "As you wish," I added, suppressing my seething anger. My mother-in-law, seemingly satisfied, cheerfully chimed in, "That's the spirit, Kelly. Quick to agree. Now make sure you work hard and earn money. I don't want our savings to decrease, so work hard." I nodded, pretending to heed her selfish words. Subsequently, Robert and my mother-in-law embarked on a spree of lavish spending, behaving as if they had lost their senses. Robert abruptly quit his job, and my mother-in-law practically moved in with us, incessantly staying at our house. They indulged in luxury brand items and frequented expensive restaurants, boasting about their sophistication. Meanwhile, all the household chores were dumped on me, as if I were a mere maid. Robert seemed convinced that my father's inheritance would materialize immediately. Carelessly withdrawing money from our joint account, my savings of $1 million dwindled rapidly. When I protested their excessive spending, Robert dismissed it, laughing. "What are you talking about? Isn't $3 million coming soon? This kind of spending is no big deal." Despite my warnings, Robert continued unchecked. A month later, he and my mother-in-law abruptly left for a trip to Hawaii, leaving me behind without an invitation. Alone at home, I resolved to take action. About a week later, while I was relaxing at home, a loud knock on the door jolted me from my thoughts. Glancing at the intercom monitor, I spotted Robert and my mother-in-law, both adorned in aloha shirts, standing at the front door. Calmly but with simmering anger, I inquired, "What do you want?" Robert's voice rang out, filled with confusion and frustration. "What are you even talking about? Why won't the door open?" Standing firm, I confidently replied through the intercom, "Well, I changed the locks on the door, so of course it won't open." "Why?" "Let's talk this over," Robert pleaded calmly, gesturing towards a nearby cafe. "Please go ahead, I'll join you shortly," I suggested, knowing our conversation was futile at the entrance. Once I confirmed they had left, I made my way to the cafe. Arriving, I saw Robert and his mother already waiting, visibly furious. "What's this about? Did you change the locks? Hand over the new keys right now," Robert demanded. "There's no need for me to give you the new keys. You both need to leave that house, I calmly asserted, facing their growing anger. Presenting a piece of paper, I revealed my decision. A divorce petition I had already filled out. Divorce? You're serious about divorcing me? His mother's voice trembled with shock. Kelly, why has it come to this? She queried, bewildered. In a quiet tone, I addressed their panic. By the way, you've been spending lavishly every day. Are you sure your finances are okay? Robert vehemently defended, what money? Of course it's fine. Your father's inheritance is coming, right? There should still be over $50,000 in our joint account. Look, I'll show you right now. Opening his banking app, Robert's expression shifted abruptly. What? What's this? Why is the money gone? It was there just the other day, he exclaimed, his mother mirroring his confusion as she frantically checked her phone. A loud knock on the door jolted me from my thoughts. Glancing at the intercom monitor, I spotted Robert and my mother-in-law, both adorned in aloha shirts, standing at the front door. Calmly but with simmering anger, I inquired, what do you want? Robert's voice rang out, filled with confusion and frustration. What are you even talking about? Why won't the door open? Standing firm, I confidently replied through the intercom. Well, I changed the locks on the door, so of course it won't open. Why? Let's talk this over, Robert pleaded calmly, gesturing towards a nearby cafe. Please go ahead, I'll join you shortly, I suggested, knowing our conversation was futile at the entrance. Once I confirmed they had left, I made my way to the cafe. Arriving, I saw Robert and his mother already waiting, visibly furious. What's this about? Did you change the locks? Hand over the new keys right now, Robert demanded. There's no need for me to give you the new keys. You both need to leave that house, I calmly asserted, facing their growing anger. Presenting a piece of paper, I revealed my decision. A divorce petition I had already filled out. Divorce? You're serious about divorcing me? His mother's voice trembled with shock. Kelly, why has it come to this? She queried, bewildered. In a quiet tone, I addressed their panic. By the way, you've been spending lavishly every day. Are you sure your finances are okay? Robert vehemently defended, what money? Of course it's fine. Your father's inheritance is coming, right? There should still be over $50,000 in our joint account. Look, I'll show you right now. Opening his banking app, Robert's expression shifted abruptly. What? What's this? Why is the money gone? It was there just the other day, he exclaimed, his mother mirroring his confusion as she frantically checked her phone. I revealed the truth to them as they panicked, failing to grasp the situation. Of course it's gone. I'm divorcing you, so I moved that $50,000 to my account as part of the property division, I explained calmly. Robert's face twisted with anger momentarily, but then he smirked, almost recalling something. Fine, I'll divorce you then. Transfer the inheritance you got from your dad right away. After all, property acquired during the marriage is split half and half in a divorce, right? He retorted. Well, you might be misunderstanding something, I replied evenly. Why didn't you know that the inheritance I received, even though it was during our marriage, doesn't count for property division? There was a moment of stunned silence between us. Then Robert and his mother's expressions shifted drastically. Perhaps they truly believed they would receive part of my inheritance. I was astonished and could only sigh in disbelief. No, that can't be true. That's impossible. His mother protested. Her face blushed with a mix of denial and anger. Please check for yourself, I said mockingly. Robert started frantically searching on his smartphone. It says here property inherited by one spouse from a parent is considered separate property. Therefore, it's not subject to division and can't be split between the spouses. He read aloud, his mother joining in shock. Desperate, Robert approached me, pleading, Kelly, please don't divorce me. I have no savings and no job. How am I supposed to live if you divorce me? Faced with his plea, I remained resolute. Realizing it was time to move forward, I spoke clearly and firmly. What are you talking about? Take responsibility for your actions. I will never forget how you both treated me. I'm divorcing you. I'll go to court if I have to. Intimidated by my fierce demeanor, Robert and his mother shrank back in fear, whimpering softly. Later on, Robert and I went through the divorce proceedings without issues. The $50,000 I had moved from our joint account was recognized as part of the marital property division. Eventually, I managed to evict Robert and his mother from my house. They found themselves deeper in debt, living in a rundown apartment and working tirelessly every day to pay off their debts. In contrast, I sold a condo I used to share with Robert and moved into my father's apartment. With the inheritance I received, I now live comfortably. Grateful to my late father, I aim to protect my happiness and spend my days peacefully, cherishing my new life ahead.